If instead you're building your course from scratch, then you'll need to fill out a form that we have created that we'll send to you in your email here very soon. You'll get this slideshow, the recording of the session, and this link to this form. The request for shell form is the only way that we know to add a space for you to work with within Canvas. So the course shells that you will request will have the Jeffco template applied. This contains information that will help students orient themselves to your class, and it can help provide a bit of a template for faculty who've requested some best practices for online courses. You are free to edit or remove that template as you see fit. Please click on Modules to get guidance on how to modify that template. And note that online learning can help you with this as well. In that Modules area, there is a page in the template, how to use this template, that has a link to a form where you can ask us to do those modifications for you. It's best if you keep the 2 modules in that template that we have that focus on student training with Canvas. These modules will help students to quickly find out the minimum requirements that they need in their devices in order to access Canvas. It also provides them quick, easily referenced materials on how to use Canvas. These materials will be similar to what you'll see in the faculty training course that will begin in early February. You'll be able to build content, add assignments, add quizzes, do everything you need to do to begin working with your course, but please do this in shells that we have designated with all capital letters shell. There are a few hanging around from earlier in the previous term that may not have this, but we will be going through and adding this term to all of these shells, so it'll be clear which ones that you should be adding content to build out your courses. When your shell is ready and your class is ready to be moved into for live students, please let Online Learning know, and we will rename it as a master. These courses are the ones that we'll look to when you request that we copy content on your behalf or that we share content with other faculty. We will not go into live Canvas courses in order to copy content except in emergencies. We'll refer to these masters so that it's always clear as to what the prime version, the pristine clear one, is. Please do not begin building a course in a Banner generated shell. Banner is connected to Canvas, so what does this mean when we say Banner generated shell? Well, if you have a course that's in Canvas, then you're probably teaching a course this term, and all of those populate into Canvas just as they normally would in Blackboard. When we flip a switch, everything piles in and every one of the courses shows up in Blackboard for you. But we're asking that you not build new content in those courses because they're closely tied to the term. And what will happen is that students, when they gain access to Canvas in April, will try to get into these courses. And if there is an accidental publishing of a course, they'll become very confused, and we will end up with some data issues in terms of which course was the live one, which one should they have been in. So please don't use a Banner connected course. Don't use the ones that are empty just sitting in there right now. It's best practices for information systems, if when you're transferring to a new system like this, that you keep the new content that you're building separate from terms. So that's why we're asking you to keep it completely separate from any courses that are tied to a term. So how will you know what these look like? I'll show you that in a moment. When it comes to archiving terms, if your content is tied to a term, you will lose access to that content. We talked about this a little bit earlier. But as long as we don't tie it to a term and we manually create the course for you, like with these shells, then what you'll wind up with instead is constant and consistent access to this particular course content. And as I mentioned earlier, it's far easier for the help desk to know exactly which content is to be considered your master content. So the metadata, which is the information about your information, will make it easier for us to work with you. So if you're not sure whether you are inside a Canvas manually created course or a banner created course, go into the course and then click on the settings area. It's at the very bottom of the course navigation menu. When you click in that area, you may be on a different tab here, but make sure you're on course details. If you have an SIS ID, and if that ID is numeric, if you're familiar with Blackboard CRNs, this is a Blackboard CRN. It's actually a banner CRN. But this is what denotes this course as being a banner created course. So if you have this, please don't work within it. Another quick way to check that you won't have to jump into the course details is to look at the short name or the course code for your class. If there's a number in a section number, it's probably a banner created course. Please don't work within those. If you see SIS ID and you see a section number, avoid adding content there until you're sure that you're going to present it to students. Because if you go into this particular course, what you'll end up with in the people area is a list of students. So anything that's done in there may get to them. So let's not build out of those courses. Instead, when we create a shell course for you, the SIS ID is not populated, so it never appears for you. There's also no section number on these particular shell courses. And the course code should contain your last name. As I said before, we're sweeping some of these up that were created earlier that didn't adhere to these naming conventions. But this is the quickest way to tell. If you have your last name, you can build in this course. These are not connected to Banner. If there is no SIS ID, you can go ahead and work within that course. Every one of the sandboxes should have no SIS ID. Please use these particular shells to build your content. If you use other things, as I said, you could lose access to it unexpectedly, you could alert students unexpectedly, and it could create later problems further down the line. So look for shell in capital letters when you're working on course content. So with all of this, how do you actually access Canvas? Well, we have since been able to add a button to the faculty tab. It is on the second row. The first one we have is the Canvas training button.